Hi, welcome to Paging Creatives. I'm your host, Bella. Pursuing a creative career can be a frustrating, isolating journey, so I sit down with working artists who are forging their own paths, making their way, and it's in hopes to encourage and inspire you, even educate, or even create a community where we network with one another, uplift each other, support each other, and I am so happy for episode 10 with Kim Manning. Hi.
Hi, how are you? So glad to be here.
You look beautiful, as always.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in. Tell me about your background.
My background, like my childhood background or my artistic background? What do you mean?
Maybe meld them together.
Try to meld it all together. Okay, well, I was literally born on a dirt road in Oklahoma in a very small town, and there wasn't really anything to do other than roller skate. So I started skating at 3 and began artistic skating as a competitor when I was 5. And I did that until I was like 15. And along that path, I kind of got into music. And my sister started playing the violin in school. So I got a violin at a garage sale and would sit next to her and do her lessons when she came home. She was 4 years older than me, So I started playing the violin that way and then started singing. Whenever I was, 10 maybe, I started singing. And then I started competing in this thing called Oklahoma Kids. And from there, one of the runners of the program ran up to my mom and was like, "You got to get this girl voice lessons and dance lessons." And so she arranged for me to get scholarships at various dance schools in town, and then introduced me to her daughter's voice teacher, who became my voice teacher. And so then I really kind of started getting into doing more acting and music and dance, less of skating. And then I quit skating when I was 16 and then just kind of fully focused on acting, dance, and theater. And I had an agent at the time in Tulsa, Oklahoma, went to school at the University of Tulsa for music theater. Also doubled in engineering. That's kind of like a side subject of Kim. But, and so from there, I went on and graduated from school, worked for a light opera company in Oklahoma. And I went to tour just to travel and follow Fish, that band Fish. And so my friend and I, we bought this Volkswagen bus for $1, Pam Parker and I. And we took the Volkswagen bus around the country and up into Canada. And in that process, I met George Clinton and, eventually ended up joining that band. So I was basically made it to New York City or DC, and then I wanted to get back to California. I had a boyfriend who lived in California. And so we actually hitchhiked across half the country and then got enough money that we paid for a bus ticket to go to Oklahoma, where we got my car. And then we drove to California. And then that's where I met George and, got in the band within I met him and then I was in the band within a week or so. And so then that was I toured around with George Clinton.
How long did you tour with him?
15 years, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
It's a really long time. When I was first in the band, we did 250 shows a year. So it was a lot of just, I almost missed out on a whole generation of a culture, because I was every day in a different city and every day doing a show, and the shows were 4 hours and the travel was 8. My whole life was consumed with Parliament. So, it's interesting. People will talk about cultural phenomenons and I'll be like, what? Oh, I had no, I had no clue that happened, because I was in another world. And so from there, I started singing with more hip hop artists and eventually started skating with George. And so then I brought my skates out one day just to kind of get around. And George saw me skate to the show. We were in Amsterdam and he was like, "Why aren't you doing that on stage?" And I was I honestly just thought nobody would care. I don't know. I've been skating so long. I just didn't think it was interesting to anybody. And from that point forward, I skated on stage. So I skated and sang at the same time. Did that, throughout my career with P-Funk, and then also with my band that I had, that I toured with. And I also started another band, Wanderlust, that I toured with. And I skated when I sang in those groups, which was tricky because I also played the keyboard bass. So I had to deal with cables. I I had a lot of cables while I was singing, so it was, it was really tricky. But all this while I kind of was like living between Northern and Southern California. And when I was living in Southern California was acting. So I would have an agent and do background work and or audition for other stuff. And so it was kind of just like, I don't know, busy. I just try to keep busy.
You can do a lot of things. So in that, you haven't really spoken a lot about the circus kind of stuff. 'Cause
Right.
you can do that too.
Right. Yeah. So circus was sort of like my third career or whatever. I'm not sure how many careers I've had, but it was one of those new careers. And it really kind of, it's so weird because it came out of touring with P-Funk. And I was like, I'd get frustrated with small stages where I didn't have much room. And that's a big band. There's like 16 people, right? For you people that don't know. And so there's like a lot of guitar players and cables everywhere. And I was like, if I just had like one of those aerial apparatuses, then I could like skate in one little place was like my vision. And so I had this vision. I just like wanted to fly. And so then I started training aerial quite a long time ago. I started with trapeze while I was still on tour with P-Funk. And I was doing that. And then from there, I was encouraged to become a contortionist. They were like, why aren't you? It's like, this is how things happen in my life. People go, why aren't you doing it? And I'm like, oh, I never thought about it, like, and they were like, why aren't you doing contortion? And I was like, oh, really? And I never thought about it. I was always very flexible and had won a lot of awards as a dancer because I was flexible, Anyway, so I became a contortionist and then recently started doing aerial. And at that time, it was kind of like, it made no sense for me to be training those skill sets because I already had a career as a musician. Like I should really have, in some ways, shoulda, coulda doubled down on my music career. And instead I was putting all my resources into learning these circus skills. And but then I met Trey, right? Mr. Trey Knight. And all of a sudden it made sense because we did our stunt duo act. So it was like to start a circus career, as a fully grown adult, your second career made no sense. But I felt drawn to do it. So I just kept doing it. And then when I met Trey, it was like, oh, I could actually have a career in this because like I have 17 years of competitive skating behind me. So plus the 15 years I skated with George, like I've been skating my whole life. So like I, can actually sort of work at a professional level, like right away, at a high level once I combined those skill sets. So I was like, oh, I guess that's why I trained it, because it all came into play with him.
That's a part of the reason why I do this, in that you shouldn't put limitations on yourself no matter how old you are. If you want to do something, just go and do it. Like you just said, you were a full-grown adult. Made no sense that you were learning circus tricks, but they came in handy. You and Trey have done a lot of stuff, a lot of television work, and so I'm sure that's been a great journey for you. So is skating the focus right now out of all of the things that you do?
Well, I'm not sure, Miss Bella. It was, and I was full into skating, and then it's been a very interesting time. As you know, my mother passed, and so that's like really strips away a lot. And it's like, well, what is it you want to do? What do you want to do? And there's been an interesting turn, it feels, in a lot of the skate jobs. And so it's like, okay, I almost wonder, am I being called back to my roots of music? Here I am wearing this jacket that I sang We Built the City on Rock and Roll when I was like, oh my God, 6 or 7. So little, right? And my stepmom made this jacket for me. It still fits, but it was probably oversized then. And it's funny, that was my root, was a singer, and an actor. And so I wonder if I'm being called back to those things, but right now I'm in this murky land of like, just hire me. Anybody,
I think we're all in that.
Yeah, we might all be there,
I don't want to blow past that. I'm really sorry about your mom. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that. That is definitely an unfortunate club that I'm sad that you've joined with me, but yeah. I support you in that. But I know for me, that kind of like grounded you in the world. I was someone I would call my mom about everything. Like,
Yeah.
should I eat this?
Everything.
Like, everything.
Every day I talk to my mom. So.
Right. So do you think that's going to affect your art, positive or negatively?
Yeah, I mean, it's, the song The Wind Beneath My Wings, right?
Mm-hmm.
My mother was definitely that for me. So without that wind, it's like, how can I go on? But yet, I know that on the other side of where I'm feeling now, I'll come to that place where I'm like, recognize that it's for her that I have to go on, right? Just kind of waiting for that to happen. And it's a process. But, my mom sacrificed so much for me. And I never realized how much stability she created in that support. And it wasn't just for me. Like when she passed at her ceremony, the other Oklahoma kids, they came up and they were like, your mom gave all of us permission to be ourselves, And I was like, wow, you too? Like, it wasn't just me, it was, she was a real patron for the arts, I guess. She didn't have a lot of financial means, but everything that she had and everything that she was, she just like fully believed me in all of my creative endeavors more than I believed myself, right? So that's what we miss, right? We don't have our cheerleaders anymore.
That is pretty amazing that they do that because my mom also was that. When I was 12, she got this grant so that she was a singer, so that we could teach underprivileged children and give them exposure to art. And hers would be voice. And even though I was 12, I was pretty prolific as a dancer when I was younger, and I was teaching dance. And they shared that. And I think that that's great that we both had that, because your parents can be a source of, why are you doing this? This is never going to pay you enough money. You're always going to struggle. And a lot of people's parents don't support them. So the fact that we both had that support is pretty amazing.
Absolutely. And I had a juxtaposition because I had my mother who was very supportive, who, was a postal employee and, wasn't at all involved in the arts and also didn't really have a lot of financial means to support a young artist. And then I had my father who was the other side, who was like, you're wasting your everything and you're going to just end up being homeless. And, so I had sort of a double dynamic that I grew up with. And it's interesting because in the wake of my mom's death, I realized, what if my mom was the one that was correct the whole time? I always thought my mom was just crazy and was like, oh, well, you're just my mom. Of course you think I'm amazing. Of course you think I am great, because you're my mom. But it's what if she was the one that was right and they were the ones that were wrong?
Well, you are pretty amazing, and I'm not your mom. You do a lot. I think, I used to tour as well. And every now and then I'm like, if I could just do one more tour, it would kind of be fun. Do you miss touring? Is that something that you would do again?
Well, I was thinking that if I was to go back to music, that would probably mean I'd have to go back on the road. And I used to freaking love being on the road. My last 4 years that I toured, I was only at home for 11 days each year. So, and that was a couple days at a time. So I'd come home, I'd be home for 2 days. I'd change my bag from spring to fall or whatever is the order, spring to summer, and then I'd go, back. And then the next time I'd come home, I'd change it from summer to fall. And then, that was so I kind of blew out a little bit. And the level of athlete that I am now, I could not tour the way that I used to tour doing that. Now there are different types of tours. I know, I saw some of your credits recently on your Instagram thing, which was cool. So people that tour with stadium level artists, you'll tend to be in a town for like 3 or 4 days, right? Maybe even a week, maybe even 2 weeks. Sometimes you like have like 2 weekends of shows, right?
It depends unless like they're doing TV dates. I know when I did some TV dates with Mariah, we were on a plane every day. And I ended up getting something that's very rare, but it was an ear disease, and it was painful for me to fly. It still kind of is, even though I haven't done that for years. Just like me flying, my ears will pop if I stand on this table. So it can be damaging on your body.
Absolutely.
But it's just so fun, and just like, okay, I'm in a new place and I'm on stage and I'm having fun. So I miss that part of it.
I mean, I do too. And I miss the live show aspect of it a lot. But I think like for us, when we were in Europe, we flew every day. And then when we were in the States, we drove every day. So there was never ever like, yes, if you had a day off, you would have 2 days in a city, maybe 3 if you had 2 days off, But so it was always that. It was always that very rigorous, hard, like it was road dog type touring, and I don't know if I could go back to road dog type touring. Like I could do
road dog.
Yeah, I could do like another, I mean, I could maybe. I mean, I don't know. Don't never say never, but like it's hard on the body. I couldn't be the type of athlete that I am today and do what I tour like I used to tour, because it was like you didn't get much sleep. You were. When you're dealing with the Midwest or the South, I don't know if it's still the case, but there's like always cigarette smoke in the venues, and you're in the venue like 8 hours. So you're just like infiltrated with cigarette smoke constantly. And, it's hard to stay crappy food, the whole nine.
So what would you, if in a perfect world, if you weren't auditioning for work and you just created your perfect creative job, what would it be? What would it entail? What would you do?
Well, that's back to the like grappling place that I'm at now. Like, well, what is it that you really want to do? Because I almost feel like proof of concept. I've proven that I can have like a career in a bunch of different things, and I'm like, so, okay, well, which one do you really want to do? Kim, like, okay, yeah, it was fun. You were a circus artist. Okay. You were, a rock star. Okay. That was fun. Okay. You've been an actress. Okay. That's been fun. You're a social media influencer. That's been fun. In fact,
I like that one a lot.
I know. In some ways,
you get us free stuff.
Yeah. And it's in some ways, it's the funnest one, because it's like I'm in control, and, and I get to create what I want when I want. And if I'm like, oh, like there's a place out there, like I'm seeing people falling incorrectly, like, great, I'll write a song about it, and then people like remember that song and then they fall safer, so there's a lot of like power to that. Like, I have an idea, I create it, it goes out there and it impacts, and there is some monetization that's happening, and I love how the union's like somewhat involved with social media, and that they let you use your contracts to get your SAG points, to get towards your eligibility. And I think that's really important, because if we can get the union more involved with these social media contracts, that's going to like help sort of standardize and create worth for social media artists. Now, with that being said, I think that like I'm still in that older school thought where it's like, real media or whatever you call it is like more important than social media. I don't know, even though it's probably not the case, but there's a part of me that, I guess it's maybe even, it's just I have stories that I want to tell. Like I have written musicals, I have written a couple TV show concepts, and, I want to create those. But conversely, I do have an album that's ready to be released. And so I want to also release that. So soon I have to focus, I think, on something, because I'm still not answering the question. I think
your stream of consciousness trying to get there.
Yeah, my stream of consciousness is trying to get there. And it almost is beginning to feel, as I step out of this traumatic change in my life with losing my mother, it's almost like I'm beginning to pragmatically realize, like, well, you do have an album ready with the album covers, with the videos with, I've like done it all, you know.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's the work that's actually literally legitimately done, produced, ready to be released. But being a musician is hard, you know. We gave up our unionship whenever, actually historically, whenever SAG became a union. It's tied into that. And because we voted against it, SAG becoming a union, and in retro, we ended up losing our union, and this was like vaudeville performers and musicians. And so it's hard to jump back into music because it's like such a free world there. And
It is, but I feel like it's a better space now because, like you said before, being a social media influencer, because I asked you to pick just one. I was just curious if you would, but you really don't have to because you're doing that already. You can skate one day, you can do aerial the next, you can sing the next, you can put it all out there. As this is what I'm doing, these are the things that I'm good at, these are the things that I love, and people are following you and you're getting engagement on all of them. So maybe you don't have to land on the one. Maybe you can continue to just do all of them.
yeah, and you know, you're right. Like we tend to forget the power of social media, and it's, you know, every time I put out a video, and you know, they seem to up and down the way our reels reach, don't they? But like
Yeah, one day I got 0.
I know lately
literally 0.
For some reason, like there used to be a lot more plays than there are, so I don't know what happened with that. But you know, even now, it's like if I had a concert with 10,000 people in it every day, I would be like super stoked, you know? So, you know, if I can think of it that way, but it's like kind of lonely in social media land, right? Like I did a concert with Ursa Live, and you know, I actually really enjoyed myself. It was almost like singing in the mirror. I was sort of having a good time. Like I liked it, and people were commenting, and I was able to respond. And anyway, afterwards, but it did feel very like I could tell people were there because I could see their comments. It looked like about 10, 15 people I knew were like, you know, whatever, singing to myself. And then when it was over, there was something like, I don't know, it wasn't that much, but it was maybe like 2,000 people had watched the concert. And I was like, oh, like, that was 2,000 people. It doesn't feel like it. It felt like literally maybe 10. Like I thought there was like 10 or 15 there, you know, like, so.
It's still, I mean, it's a lot of people to be able to, if you were selling a record, all 2,000 people bought them. So there's just a way now to be able to legitimately take care of yourself without the big engines and the powers that be. And that's what I love about it.
Well, there you go. And like, and maybe that's like the thing that like we have to acquiesce to, you know, because I feel that we were so inundated in that culture of like, oh, if you're lucky, you'll get picked up by. And like you and I were both lucky, right? And we got picked up by,
right?
You know, but like here we are,
right.
You know? So, it's like maybe it is more of shutting off. And I was actually watching a YouTube show about different influencers, and they were going to guess who made the most money, right? And it's I forget, it's some series where they make people rank themselves, and so they were ranking themselves and who made the most money and who made the least. And at one point they showed like their stats, you know, their numbers, the all important numbers in social media. And I was kind of like, oh, like, well, I was like bigger than all of them on Instagram. You know, I was kind of like, oh, like, I could be in this group actually, right? And then when they actually showed all their incomes, like all of them, the lowest person was like 130,000, you know, and I'm like, wow, so like maybe this really is a job, you know, like I was, you know, to be completely transparent, prior to my mother's passing, it was a job. And then I did quit posting for 2 months. And when I was in ICU with my mother, and as she passed, and it's just, I think it was just coincidence because like Pinterest stopped paying, and then Instagram stopped their reels, and Facebook stopped their reels program. It all happened like at once, and all of a sudden the monetization there stopped. So that's like the other flip side to the social media, you know, income.
Yeah, you're in control and you're not in control.
Right. They make you think you're in control.
That's why I think it's important too. Like people are starting to look in like creating their own apps which is something you definitely can do just with the skating, because that's taken off again, just to get some more and gain some control of your audience while you still have access to them, because it does seem like that they're making some changes. Because again, I put up a reel and it got 0 views. I didn't even know that was possible. So
Right.
0,
You're like
girl.
0. Like you're like, I thought I sent it to my friend, but
Or
I
at least
guess
that.
I know. Yeah.
I always ask a question in closing, and the question today, and I'll answer first so it gives you a chance, is with the strike that's going on right now, if you could add anything to the contract, what would it be? And mine would be, I would want more equity for everyone. And I know that doesn't just encompass SAG, but I just feel like if we're working on a project and it's a multi-million-dollar project and one person is making $20 million and someone else is making $75 a day, I feel like there's something wrong with that. I've never had millions of dollars, so I don't know how many millions or billions you need, but I don't understand why there can't be more equity across the board. If there's that much money out there, then why can't it be shared more with everyone? Especially if we are going to keep it more actor focused, which is fine, I'm an actor, then at least even share more across the board throughout the entire call sheet, not just number 1 gets $20 million, number 2 gets $20,000, and then we trickle down from there. I don't think that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. That equity versus equity versus equality or something, like understanding the true of it. And, I overheard you earlier talking about like stand-ins and being like part of the lighting crew. Like that's, to me, when I heard you say that, I was like, yeah, that's obvious. Like, a lot of people might not know that, but that's pretty much what the stand-ins do. They like stand in for the actors so the lighting can get the lighting right, So why is it not part of the lighting department? And I feel like in general that's what feel is like there's like these categorization that's happened that like sticks people into pay categories. And I think that these rules were made by the union in order to ensure that performers get paid for what they give. But instead, productions have been allowed to use those formulas to limit what performers can give so that they don't have to pay them. So, for example, like, I'm the mail lady, right? I come in and hand a letter and like say, here's your mail, right? And then walk away, right? Well, they don't want to pay that person an under 5 rate. So instead, they're going to hire a background to do it. And then they're going to hire a voiceover person to say, here's your mail, so that they don't have to pay anybody under 5 rate, And it's like the categorizations and the rules are being used against us. I have a lot to say about this, and I think an area that personally affects me in this, is when you're dealing with background special abilities. I don't know how many times I've been on a set and I'm doing like skating or contortion, and I'm like literally doing a stunt. Like one example was I did Stumptown, and I was a pole dancer, and I remember I showed up and the security lady was like, "Are you stunts?" And I was like, you would think I was. And then, during that day, like so many times I'm like up at the top of the pole in the splits upside down, and I like fall straight to the ground, right? Because that's like a pole dance move, right? And of course I'm like sliding on the pole, I fall on the ground, and of course I leave and I have bruises because I was pole dancing all day, and you're going to have bruises when you're doing that. And I was watching the stunt guys, and they were literally just like one dude was like pushing the other guy, and the other guy was like taking a fall. And, I was like, so I got paid, I forget what it was that day, but, they only have to pay like an extra $8 for special ability. So they could pay me as little as like, what, $193 or something, And meanwhile, these stunt guys are getting like $1,000 a day, plus they're going to get their residuals of that, And I'm the one going home with bruises. I'm one that took way more falls in the splits upside down on the ground, So I think we need to reconsider what a stunt is. Because is a stunt something that comes through a stunt choreographer or a coordinator?
Well,
or
see,
is
that's
a
interesting
stunt...
that you say that, because it depends. So I think that that's a great answer. Categorization of jobs, because it's all about what they want to pay for and what they can get away with. Because they can just book background and say, well, oh, this person can do this. And so it's about getting on set and saying no, which a lot of people don't want to do because everybody wants a job, which also just like brings up just so much that we don't have time to go into here. But I love that categorization. Thank you for bringing that up. And I'm going to,
I think
I'm going to fight for that.
Yeah, I think that that's like a way that equity can be looked at. And, I think like, are all background the same? Like, there's this great book, Politics of Glamour, that talks about how SAG was formed by a political scientist in Wisconsin, a professor. And it's a very interesting book. And it just talks about how, like, when the theater actors, whenever there was speaking started happening in film and they started bringing theater actors in from New York, they were like appalled at how background was treated. Like, that's not how the chorus is treated in theater. Like, why are background treated so differently? And
because they can.
But that's it, And I think that, that in general needs to, like, the way, but, I know that we're also a pawn, like the, background's a pawn in all these contracts. So, I don't know, like, we used to have our own union and maybe that's what needs to happen again, or I'm not sure, but there's definitely an issue with how little background is being paid, but it goes up. Like you said, stand-in, even the under fives.
All of it. I think across the board, actors, unless you are number one on the call sheet or unless you're a name, across the board, everyone needs to be paid more. Well, thank you for sitting down with me.
Yes, definitely.
Tell everyone where they can find you.
Okay, so you can find me at kimmanning.com. You can follow my program, which is skatelikeapro.com. And then, of course, I'm on social medias. Kim Manning Space Queen is my name, which is also how you can find me on iTunes. I'm Space Queen, Kim Manning Space Queen, and Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And I think I'm Kim Manning Music there.
I will link all of it. Well, thank you so much for listening or watching to Paging Creatives. Please like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff. It helps the channel. Creatives, your art brings light and love into the world, and I love and support you. Till next time.
I just wanna do whatever you want me to. No inhibitions, no hesitation.